never seen or heard before. 55,000 in attendance.
A full stadium of people watching mixed martial arts, headlined by Georges St-Pierre.
He was the national hero, fighting the best guys, and he did that.
You could tell that there was something special about him.
The ways he is the perfect.
He truly was a master martial artist across all.
At 170 pounds.
I want that belt so
Get ready for a story of dominance, resilience, and a whole lot of Canadian pride. Let's talk about the one and only Georges St-Pierre, who was born on May 19, 1981 in St. Isidore, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. January 31, 2004, when St-Pierre fought Karo Parisyan at UFC 46. It was St-Pierre's UFC debut, and St-Pierre dominated the grappling exchanges, controlling Parisyan on the ground and avoiding submission attempts. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision, and this fight marked the beginning of St-Pierre's illustrious UFC career.
What a great debut. Congratulations, Georges St-Pierre.
June 19, 2004, when St-Pierre fought Hieron at UFC 48. St-Pierre dominated the fight with 2 knockdowns and controlled the distance with his striking. St-Pierre won via knockout in round 1.
Georges St-Pierre wins in the first round.
October 24, 2004, when St-Pierre fought Hughes at UFC 50. Hughes dominated the early going and caught St-Pierre with a first-round armbar submission. The loss was the first of St-Pierre's career.
And it's all over. It's all over. Matt Hughes with a submission victory.
April 16, 2005, when St-Pierre fought Jason Miller at UFC 52. St-Pierre dominated the fight, successfully executed the 5 takedowns, and St-Pierre won via unanimous decision.
And victorious. Without a doubt. Sold out. MGM Grand Garden Arena.
August 20, 2005, when St-Pierre fought Frank Trigg at UFC 54. St-Pierre controlled the fight and won via rear naked choke submission in round 1. November 19, 2005, when St-Pierre fought Sherk at UFC 56. St-Pierre dominated the fight, showcasing his skills in the octagon. St-Pierre won via technical knockout.
Sherk could not withstand an assault of elbows and fists by Georges St-Pierre.
March 4, 2006, when St-Pierre fought BJ Penn at UFC 58. St-Pierre controlled most of the rounds and won via split decision.
BJ, final minute. And another takedown by St-Pierre. That could seal the deal.
November 18, 2006, when St-Pierre fought Hughes for the second time at UFC 65. St-Pierre dominated the fight, showcasing his impressive kicking skills with a notable head kick that contributed to the stoppage of the fight. St-Pierre won via technical knockout.
Is the new welterweight champion. Unbelievable shot.
April 7, 2007, when St-Pierre fought Serra at UFC 69. Serra's powerful fists proved too much for St-Pierre, who was the favorite going into the fight. Serra won via technical knockout in round 1.
He's hurt him 3 times in the last 60 seconds.
Serra is the new welterweight champion of the world.
August 25, 2007, when St-Pierre fought Koscheck at UFC 74. St-Pierre out-wrestled Koscheck by scoring takedowns and maintaining top position through the fight. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision.
The winner by unanimous decision, Georges St-Pierre!
December 29, 2007, when St-Pierre fought Hughes for the 3rd time at UFC 79. St-Pierre won via armbar submission in the 2nd round and won the submission of the night bonus.
Trying to submit Hughes. Not quite yet. And it's all over. Georges St-Pierre defeats Matt Hughes again.
April 19, 2008, when St-Pierre fought Serra for the second time at UFC 83. St-Pierre pressed the action early with a takedown and mixed up his attack on Serra. The fight was stopped by the referee when Serra was unable to defend himself from St-Pierre's continuous knee blows. St-Pierre won via technical knockout in round 2.
Undisputed UFC Welterweight Champion.
And now, for the second time, the new
August 9, 2008, when St-Pierre fought Fitch at the UFC 87. St-Pierre dominated the fight, scoring multiple strikes and taking Fitch down seemingly at will. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision and earned him his first Fight of the Night award.
For the winner, George Rush St-Pierre.
January 31, 2009, when St-Pierre fought BJ Penn for the second time at UFC 94. At the later round, St-Pierre took Penn down at will, repeatedly passed his guard, and persistently punished the Hawaiian with ground and pound attacks. St-Pierre won via technical knockout in round 4, retaining his UFC welterweight title.
Has stopped the fight. George St-Pierre has defeated BJ Penn.
July 11, 2009, when St-Pierre fought Thiago Alves at UFC 100. Despite suffering a groin injury in the third round, St-Pierre demonstrated remarkable skill utilizing takedown and submission to outmaneuver Alves. St-Pierre won by a unanimous decision.
St-Pierre and Alves go the distance, and he will remain the welterweight champion.
March 27, 2010, when St-Pierre fought Dan Hardy at UFC 111. St-Pierre dominated the fight with his wrestling. He caught Hardy in the first round with armbar, but Hardy refused to tap and eventually fought off the hold. In the fourth round, St-Pierre caught Hardy in a Kimura, but again, St-Pierre failed to finish Hardy. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision.
What a performance by George Rush St-Pierre.
December 11, 2010, when St-Pierre fought Koscheck for the second time at UFC 124. St-Pierre dominated the fight, showcasing his superior striking and accurate boxing. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision, and the fight earned him a Fight of the Night award.
Is over. George Rush St-Pierre.
April 30, 2011, when St-Pierre fought Jake Shields at UFC 129. St-Pierre dominated most of the round with strikes and takedown and won via unanimous decision.
And still, the UFC welterweight champion of the world, George.
November 17, 2012, when St-Pierre fought Carlos Condit at UFC 154. St-Pierre dominated the fight, taking down Condit repeatedly while defending multiple submission attempts and delivering multiple strikes from Condit's active guard. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision, and they both won the Fight of the Night honors for their performances.
Big elbows by the champion. And they go the distance. What a fight.
March 16, 2013, when St-Pierre fought Diaz at UFC 158. St-Pierre's ability to take Diaz down repeatedly proved pivotal in controlling the fight's tempo and outcome. St-Pierre won via unanimous decision and defended his title for the 8th time.
And still, the undisputed UFC welterweight champion of the world.
November 16, 2013, when St-Pierre fought Hendricks at UFC 167. St-Pierre won the fight by a controversial split decision. Despite earned the St-Pierre Fight of the Night award.
And still, the undisputed UFC.
November 4, 2017, when St-Pierre fought Michael Bisping at UFC 217. St-Pierre defeated Bisping via technical submission in the third round to become the middleweight champion. The win earned St-Pierre his first performance of the night bonus award.
It's over, Joe. It's over.
George St-Pierre! He is the new UFC middleweight champion! Wow!
February 21, 2019, when St-Pierre announced his official retirement from MMA at the Bell Center in Montreal.
It was a long process in my mind, and everybody knows it's not a surprise. I announced my retirement. There's no tears. I'm very happy to do it.
May 9, 2020, when UFC announced that St-Pierre will be inducted into the modern era wing of the UFC Hall of Fame.
Greatest champion in UFC welterweight history, ladies and gentlemen, George St-Pierre.
June 9, 2021, when St. Isidore honored St-Pierre with the unveiling of life-size 136-kilogram bronze statue of himself, complete with the biography entitled Place GSP.
I really hope it will inspire many generations.
October 19, 2023, when St-Pierre was awarded the Order of Sport and inducted into Canada's Sport Hall of Fame.
I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to all the company that supported me. Thank you to the UFC.
Hughes, mon nom, Jean-Pierre, mon karaté, mon